Well, hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Sunday, January 27th, 2019. I wish it were 2018. I'd be turning 59 today, but instead I'm turning 60. So thanks, Anthony Orr, for the birthday wishes. And I know a number of you have expressed birthday wishes either here or on my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Chaffee, or on my Patreon platform. Thanks very much for the kind wishes. It also comes with a bit of a pinched nerve in my neck, so it's keeping me uh, down just a little bit. But nonetheless, here's what I'm going to do this morning. I'm going to do a quick. We're going to do a quick live stream here to cover what's going on, and then possibly tonight, if I'm feeling up to it, depending on what this neck thing does to me. Um, I'll jump on, but only after Victoria is the latest episode of Victoria is done on PBS. So let's get started. We've got actually some blizzard warnings going on this morning up in the northern plains, and rightfully so, with the bitter cold air that's up there. And there's going to be some snow issues with the next push of cold Arctic air that's coming down. And this is really pretty much, let's call it the mother lode, relatively speaking. And winter storm warnings are up from eastern North Dakota across Minnesota on that diagonal northeastern Iowa, much of the state of Wisconsin, and even now down into northern Illinois, and then cutting across the state of Michigan with the southern part and the northern part under advisories. And you can see the blizzard warnings that are up in the orange there in North Dakota and into South Dakota. Remember that the blizzard warning is not necessarily because of heavy snow actually falling. It could very well be because of blowing snow, and that restricts visibility down to a quarter of a mile or less. And of course, they have the temperature criteria here that they're dealing with. I jumped ahead here on the temperatures, but let's run back to Monday morning. Now, there's this northern plains low that is coming down. Nonetheless, the temperatures forecast lows across the northern plains and the upper Midwest and through the Great Lakes are going to be below zero to single digits in and around the Chicago area, and also the colder air will be up into the interior areas of the Northeast. The coastal areas are going to be pretty much in the 20s tonight with the next round of the next cold shot that's coming into the east here that is really going to be kind of deflected more to the north than pushing down to the south. And now you're starting to see the temperature profile on Monday. This is for Tuesday morning with regards to the forecast lows, and they are getting a bit more significant. That the Arctic front and the low that goes with it is now at this point moving across eastern Michigan, and you can see where all the minuses are. You got the minus 10s, minus 15s, minus 20s, and even some minus 25s up there coming down on Tuesday. Chicago is for at zero here. We're minus 2 at Milwaukee, and then it's Wednesday morning that you see this, really big plunge of bitter cold air, and the minus 20s going down to Chicago, the minus teens into northwestern Ohio, into southeastern, into southern Michigan. The single digits Wednesday morning reach as far east as eastern Pennsylvania and below zero readings in western Pennsylvania, but the Arctic front still kind of taking its time moving out on Wednesday morning. There's actually two fronts. There's going to be a second front that's going to come in Friday afternoon, and that will usher in the bitter cold air into the eastern part of the United States. And then Thursday is, I think, going to be the coldest day in terms of the widespread nature of who's got temperatures below zero. The below zero line is going to extend from the northern plains down through the northern half of the Ohio Valley, and then pushing on up through the Northeast, the interior areas of the Northeast. I think the big cities are going to wind up staying in the single digits to around 10. And the southern extent of the cold brings the freezing line down into northern Florida and into the Florida Panhandle. And Friday, you start to see a retreat there in the southern part. Still pretty cold, but not quite as extreme as the vortex is beginning to pull out at this point, and we're going to start to see the temperatures begin to moderate, but still pretty cold with single digits and single digit above zero, single digit below zero lows, and Chicago may finally come above water on Friday or above ice on Friday as temperatures go back up into the positive numbers by then. Now, with respect to snowfall during the next 48 hours, so this takes us to Tuesday evening. So the snow amounts are actually going to be substantial here, even in the area with the blizzard warning. We're talking about 6-inch snows from the eastern Dakotas across Minnesota into Wisconsin. Green Bay, 10, Weather Service forecasting 10 for Green Bay, a foot over Milwaukee for Milwaukee, 5 for Chicago. So Chicago's in kind of on the southern edge of all this, of the 6-inch snows anyway. And by the way, always remember every area's got a slightly different criteria as regards to what constitutes a winter weather advisory versus a winter storm warning. For example, in New York City, it's 4 inches. If you go up to the Hudson Valley, not too far away up in Dutchess County and points northward, it's basically 6 inches. So everybody's got their criteria. I'm not sure which the criteria is for Chicago, whether it's 4 or whether it's 6. I guess the easiest way to look to check that is to see, or it might even be 5. So I think Chicago is currently under a winter weather advisory, and everybody seems to be trying to get on their website at the same time. So, oh well. So that pretty much sums it up with respect to where we're going with this whole Arctic plunge or polar vortex or whatever you want to call it that is coming down. Let's quickly go through what the forecast scenario is. I want to point out for those of you in the state of Florida, actually, even before we get to this, I want to go to the radar, and because the radar is pretty busy here down in Florida, we have a lot of rain moving across the state at the moment, and this is because we have low pressure that is developing in the eastern Gulf and is going to eventually find its way off the Florida coast. Now, this would it's sometimes you certainly had the puzzle pieces here for the potential for a storm coming up the East Coast, but it's not going to happen this time around, and I'll show you on the upper air why. But still, quite a bit of rain going on over Florida, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if you're going to wind up seeing some flash flooding issues with this. It's a lot of overrunning precip that is running out to the northeast as this low that is going to develop into a storm out in the Atlantic is beginning to take shape. Meanwhile, up to the northeast, we do have another cold front coming, and there's actually some snow shower activity going on ahead of it. It's so mild where I am today, where it's going to be in the 40s on Long Island, that if any of this survives, and it may not, there could be just a rain shower here. But meanwhile, that second line that's back through western New York and western Pennsylvania, that is another push of cold air. So that might produce a couple of snow squalls that could whiten the ground up in northern Pennsylvania and on up into the Catskills and into the Hudson Valley if it holds together by late afternoon, because I'm not 100% convinced that this is really going to hold together as it moves along to the east. Otherwise, throughout much of the rest of the country, there's not too much happening. Got some snow showers going on off Lake Superior and Lake Michigan. Also getting some snow coming down now into the Dakotas. So this is the leading edge of the next storm system that is going to drive the push of cold air into the east. And on the surface map, weak system here in the east. Your low that is dropping down out of Canada, that's heading into the Dakotas. A lot of cold air embedded in here from the current high that is built in. We've got temperatures down in the minus 30, minus 40 degree range. So it's pretty cold here. The center of the high sitting over northern Minnesota. So I believe the low in International Falls this morning was 45 degrees below zero. So this is cold air with this high that is up to the north. Look at that. I don't know what station that actually is. That's a minus 49 temperature with a minus 58 dew point. Okay, so my question is, I mean, even though there's no wind, because the wind is dead calm, and I understand that that's, a lot of that's radiational cooling type cold, but how do you stand outside in that? I mean, I experienced 15 below with a 40 mile an hour wind when I was up in New Hampshire a couple of years ago, and that's the coldest weather I've ever been in. I had a really tough time with it. I literally had difficulty warming up when I went back inside. I stood inside a fireplace trying to warm up, and it didn't work. But boy, if there's folks that live up there, and I'm sure there are, I give you a lot of credit. Here's the wave off the Florida coast down. It's a 10-12 low with the trailing front. You got pretty solid overrunning here with cooler air up to the north. Temperatures actually in the 30s across Georgia and northern Florida in the low 40s. You get down closer to the frontal boundary. It's pretty miserable out there. Temperatures in the upper 50s and low 60s. So it's a raw type of day for much of the state. So let's look at what's happening going forward here in the short range, because we've got the latest. This is from the last couple of days with the trough in the east lifting out. Now you've got three pieces here. You'll notice there's a shortwave trough that's moving off the Florida coast, another one dropping down into the northern plains. This is for tomorrow morning, and a vortex up in southeastern Canada. Three separate pieces, and one of the big problems here with seeing the system off the Florida coast and why it's not coming up the East Coast. Look at the Atlantic on this North America shot. It gives you a good idea of what's happening out there. It's a ruler. There's nothing, okay? It's pretty much a straight line from off the southeast coast of the United States running right across much of the Atlantic. It's a straight line, screaming jet. There's no place for this to go. If there were other systems out there, this system could very well have been blocked from moving out to the east. And then you've got all these other short waves working their way through the northern part of the jet. It could have timed out to bring a storm up the east coast. Not going to happen, okay? And I happen to think that the NAM model is probably a bit overdone with its view on this to begin with, because it just seems that it's overdone to me and too far to the left. But with the absence of anything out here, it's just going to go screaming out to the east. So you're left with the first vortex in eastern Canada pulling out, short wave that's dropping into the northern plains that represents the next weather system that's moving in. And you've got the vortex to the north, which is the bitter cold air that's plunging down into the plains and into the Great Lakes. This is for many areas will be the coldest air of the winter so far, and it might very well wind up being the coldest air of the winter. That vortex pulls out because there's no blocking at all, and oftentimes when you see this sort of, let's call it this mother lode of cold air coming down, it's almost as if there's nothing left in the pantry, and you're just going to have to wait for mom or dad to go and do the food shopping to restock it. That's kind of where we are in the atmosphere. So while that happens, the models, and I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be the case, drop a deep trough into the west. And that is going to mean warmer air coming into the east. If you look at the flow, it's mostly west-southwest next week. And that carries into at least a good chunk of next week before things start to change again. And then we're evolving into something else in the longer term. I got it. It's disheartening for snow lovers to look at this in some areas. The vast majority of my audience, for those of you, my audience, you're in that snow hole that exists right now from just north and west of Boston to north and west of New York City to about Philadelphia. There's this gigantic snow hole, and there are some exceptions inside that snow hole as well, but for the most part, that's where it is. And if you look at the profile of snowfall this winter, north and west of that line, it's actually been a pretty fairly snowy winter. There have been a number of opportunities for snow going back since November. I mean, there have also been interruptions, but it has been a halfway decent winter for snow lovers in that region. Also, for those of you in the Mid-Atlantic and in the interior Mid-Atlantic in particular, this too has been a pretty ample year. You've had two events so far that have produced as much as a foot of snow or more, for depending on one area or another. That's been the case. And you know as well as I do, if you're in Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, sometimes you can go a long stretch without seeing a half a foot, a 6-inch snowfall. In the Great Lakes, it's been substantial, and also it's been cold because the mean trough position has been setting up near 90 degrees west, and that's great for the snow lovers in the Great Lakes. And now participating in some very, very bitter cold air. It's been kind of uneven, but it's there. I don't know where we're going with this in the long haul, to be quite honest with you. I mean, and I always try to be honest with you, but we're looking at a pattern that is going to move to the Pacific, taking over for at least a little while. Trying to kind of decipher clues as to where this is wandering beyond the 2-week time frame. It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, you do have the jet stream across the Pacific showing a little bit of amplitude from place to place and from time to time in the long range. But you know what? It's not the Pacific is its own mess. You go from amplitude to screaming jet halfway across from Asia, and then a ridge that kind of pops up toward the north to the northwest into the Gulf of Alaska. It's just not that promising. You don't have the amplitude in the Pacific where you need it to be in order to shift the ridge into the eastern part of the United States. It starts to come back late in the forecast period to a certain extent, but I don't know. It's hard to grab a. Maybe this is going to be one of those winters that we haven't had recently, which is where we've been getting used to these winters extending themselves into March and even into early April. Maybe the overall winter pattern is just going to simply shut down early, and spring is going to come the way where it actually matches the calendar. I don't know. It is what it is. We'll enjoy the ride whichever way it takes it, and just watch it all play out uh, in the due course of time. Okay, so I see my Patreon guys had their Patreon live stream this morning, but they just did not have enough, so they're on here, and then and I appreciate it. I had skipped a YouTube live stream as well. Aaron Raybear, thank you so much for hitting super chat, and I appreciate the birthday wishes. Thank you. For those of you who've joined late, today is my birthday. I'm turning 60 years old, and in the process of turning my 60 years old, it comes complete with a heating pad because I have a pinched nerve in my neck that has been driving me crazy for the last 3 days. It's made it very difficult for me to sit down for long periods of time. So it makes it hard for me to even do these live streams. But apparently it's getting better. I didn't have any problems sleeping last night, and it's not bothering me that much now. So perhaps I'm past the worst of it. I actually had this back, I mentioned earlier, I had this back around Christmas time or a little bit past, right after Christmas, and it was pretty rough for a few days. But then I bought a new pillow. I bought new pillows, and I literally walked up feeling much better the next day. So who knows? Then it disappeared and it came back. Hey, Reaver, thank you so much. Thank you for hitting super chat. I really appreciate it. Anne Marie, appreciate the birthday wishes. Michael Dunn, nice to see you on board this morning. I'm going to do a quick check of the weather in Europe since many of you might be on. So, and I'm frustrated, Reaver, with the winter too. It's been, forecasting the few winter weather events that we've had has been a bit of a challenge, particularly with the way things have turned out in some areas. Some areas, some of these I've done fairly well with, others less so. I am not, Scott Reese, I'm not too overly enthused by the models amping up the snowfall amounts with this Arctic boundary. I can see how it happens, but at this stage of the game, I would be real as a forecaster. I would be really cautious in putting too many eggs into that particular basket because of the fact that, hey, you know what? It's proven over and over again this winter that it hasn't really wanted to snow. At least in the snow hole area. Okay, let me just make sure I make that clear. At least in my neck of the woods, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, it's been kind of tough. And it's hard for me to go upside. If we were having a winter where we were basically getting one system after another, yeah, I could look at this and certainly make a case for a bigger snowfall, the coating to a couple of inches. But I can't bring myself to do that right now. Okay, so right at the moment, we've got a fairly strong low sitting in the North Sea, bringing some snows up into northern England and Scotland. And that low is going to drop southeastward. And by the way, the models did a really good job telegraphing this major storm that went through the Mediterranean and brought what looked like strong tropical storm conditions across parts of coastal Turkey over the last couple of days. That low from the North Sea drops down into Germany and Poland and kind of disappears. And we've got a cold flow coming in off the Atlantic with some cold air pushing down from Greenland here. So it looks like for Tuesday and Wednesday, with a low that's going to be moving into northern France there, 981 low. I think there stands to be a good chance for snow for England, Ireland, and Scotland out of this. And that moves along. And then there's another strong low toward the end of the week. The pattern's very active for storms actually tracking to your south and maybe some cold air up pinned in over Ireland and over England and over Scotland. So it could be a pretty interesting week for snow lovers in Western Europe. Let's take a look at their snowfall total forecast. And over the next 10 days, not half bad. Looks like some reasonable amounts. The purples are all 12 centimeters or more. And you're starting to get into some pockets of 20 and 30 centimeters as you go up into northern Scotland. But Northern Ireland seems to do fairly well with snowfall, and a little lesser amounts as you go to the south. And you can see the extent of the snow on the continent, with the exception for areas right along the immediate coast in France and down in coastal Spain. The snow is substantial. Eastern France, much of Italy looks pretty bullish for snow, as well as the western part of Germany. Kind of has some variability here as you headed toward the western part of Germany versus the east, and then it picks up again as you head further east into Poland, and of course big amounts up in Norway and Sweden, where it snows a lot up there. So you're seeing your winter weather, and really quick, we'll switch off to Eastern Canada and take a look. And here we have some snow amounts over the next 10 days. Not too shabby as you move up north and west into parts of Quebec. Otherwise, perhaps a shade substandard as we look around toward Newfoundland. Nova Scotia picks up a bit more. Let's see how the storm track is on the GFS. And actually have a little bit of snow going on here for Monday as low pressure goes out to the south. So that's part of that Florida low that moves away. And then it's the Arctic boundary moves in with a chance for some snow along about Thursday. Gets Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. Doesn't look like anything substantial though. And they look like more like light events here going forward over the next 10 days in southeastern Canada. More light events than anything else. Here's a stronger low going into day 11, running up through New Brunswick. That's a pretty wrapped up low there, a 974 low. So, of course, now we're 10 days into the long range, so we'll see. We'll have to re-examine this as far as consistency in the models are concerned. So let me just come back to the chat board really, really fast. And let's just thank you all those of you for the birthday wishes. Really, really appreciate it. Uh, David Allen, it's been fairly mild the last few days, 52, highest all month, winds gusting to 50 early today. Thanks for the looking at Europe, much appreciated. Oh, no problem. I don't always remember, and I usually get reminded when someone is on. National Chocolate Cake for the birthday boy. Oh, thank you so much, Phil P. I really appreciate it. You're very kind. It gets me a slice of cake and maybe a cigar as well for later on today. I'm gonna make sure I stop at my my local cigar place and pick a couple of them up for later on. I know, Gary. It's not a question of being apologetic. I guess maybe because there's a sense that you go into the snow lovers like to go into the winter with a bit of an optimistic view when it comes to actually seeing the white stuff, and you know I kind of feel bad about it in a way. I want to see it too, and we look at these weather systems and we watch them evolve, and some of them pan out and some of them don't, and in some years they almost all of them will pan out, and in some years almost all of them don't pan out, and we seem to be in one of, especially I think over the fact that for the vast majority of the time over the last 15 plus years, most of the winters here in my neck of the woods anyway have produced well above normal snowfalls for most of the area. So everybody's kind of gotten used to the fact that it snows a lot around here, and in reality, when you look back at the records, it really isn't the case. We're just in some kind of an upcycle, and it happens to be holding up and holding on pretty well. But even in that upcycle, there have been a few clunker years, and that could be where we're at. Again, inside that snow hole, that geographic snow hole that I described. There's a map floating around. I'm going to try and find it and bring it up over the next couple of days so you can really appreciate how small this area, this snow hole is. It's fun for snow lovers when they're in the bonanza, when they're in the jackpot zone every time, but not when it's like this. All right, folks, I got to run. Have a great day. Enjoy your Sunday. Hey, Roy Wilson, thank you so much for hitting Super Chat. Really appreciate it greatly. Thank you. And thanks again, everybody, for all the birthday wishes. You're most kind. But I'm going to run out. Maybe by getting outside and walking around, I can stretch this neck of mine and it won't feel so bad. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break today. And I'll probably do what I did yesterday, which is sometime late this evening, I will post again. I'm thinking that maybe if I do a live stream tonight, it'll be after 10 o'clock. I like to watch the series Victoria on PBS. I really enjoy watching period pieces, even if they don't follow history exactly as it happened. But nonetheless, it's all about creativity, and I understand that. So right after that, if I feel up to it and my neck is not bothering me, I will attempt a live stream. If not, we'll have to wait till tomorrow, and maybe I'll do one tomorrow morning instead. So just look for a flux here in terms of my scheduling. My Patreon members, you got your extra live stream this morning. I'll try to get a few posts on later today as I pick off a quick look at some of the models. 99 Wolves, good to see you on. You got snow coming up for Chicago and the bitter cold. You're going to see temperatures below zero for 48 to 72 hours straight. That is not going to be fun. But once this polar shot comes down, things are going to get quiet for a while. So anyway, tomorrow we'll be back on a regular schedule. So that means regular live stream at 7 o'clock Eastern time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and a Joe and Joe Facebook show tomorrow night at 9:20. Have a great Sunday, everybody. We'll either see you later or we'll see you tomorrow.